This is KHTS News Director Michael Brown sitting down with, I guess we can now say, or I don't know if we can say it yet, former or current city council member
You can
Bob
say
Kellar.
whatever you want. It's just Bob Kellar. I go by Bob. That's it.
Well, we're sitting here with Bob Kellar, and we're talking about his career in the city council, what led up to it, and kind of what's in store for him now in the future, and kind of what's in store from his perspective for the city of Santa Clarita. So before we get into actually how you got into the city council and things like that, I always like to start at the beginning of everybody's stories. The city council wasn't your first time being any sort of public servant or serving in some capacity. In the 60s, you were in the Army.
I was.
And then right after that, you served for, 25 years?
That's
in
correct,
in the Los
25
Angeles
years.
Police Department. Talk to me a little bit about how serving in both those capacities kind of shaped who you were leading up to your city council run, or leading up to who you were today, how that kind of shaped you.
Well, if we go that far back, 1965, I was 21 years old, and at that time, the draft was in place. So there was no ifs, ands, or buts. I was going to be drafted. I knew that. I was going to college, but I didn't have enough credits or classes that would. And frankly, I had no problem going into service. None. I was fine with it. As a matter of fact, I did not want to be drafted. I wanted to enlist. And I actually went to a recruitment office one time down in Van Nuys, and I just didn't gel with the guy. That was all. It's not taking anything away, but ultimately I was drafted, and I served 2 years in the Army, and honestly, I am so pleased that I did it. I was going to extend. A lot of people have had this confused over the years. I did not go to Vietnam. Obviously, it was quite involved at that time period. And I have to credit my mother. I've told this story before, but she sent me my weekly letter. And in the letter, there was a newspaper clipping, and it said, don't know if you knew this young man, but I see he went to the same high school you did. And in fact, I did know him. And he had joined the LAPD and had been shot and killed. And I thought about that, and I ultimately made a decision. I had the ability. I mean, I was getting out, or I could extend. I decided I'm going to leave the Army and I'm going to join the LAPD, and that's exactly what I did. So I worked on the LAPD for 25 years, and no regrets. I say to school children now and then, knowing what I know today, if I had to do it all over again, I'd become a Los Angeles police officer, and I've meant that. And I know these are troubled times that we have right now, but I still am so pleased that I became a police officer, and no regrets whatsoever.
So what were you doing in the LAPD, and kind of how did that impact you as a person?
Good question. I served in a number of capacities during my 25 years there. I was in special weapons and tactics back in the early 70s, and I've still got half a dozen friends that we all worked together back in that time period, and we get together now and then and play a little golf today. But they were interesting times, to say the least, in that capacity. Like I say, I worked a number of jobs, but I settled into a position at the police academy, and I was the sergeant in charge of the reserve officer training program. And ultimately, I did that for my last 10 years on the department. I loved that job. I absolutely loved that job, being able to have some influence on young police officers coming onto the department and so forth. I kept that position until I retired in 1993.
Sounds like you really were invested in this job. What prompted you to retire from the LAPD?
25 years. I could remember like yesterday, driving to the academy. There were four of us that always carpooled to the academy every day, going when I was back in 68 is when I went on. And I can remember telling them, guys, the way I see it, 25 years, and then I want to see if there's another chapter in the book. And out of absolutely no complaints, I could have stayed for 30, but I left at 25, and I have no regrets. And I attained my real estate license a couple of years prior to my retirement. And so when I did retire, I kind of hit the ground running, if you will, in the real estate businesses, and I've been in it ever since.
You weren't just working as a real estate agent, you also were getting involved in some capacities within Santa Clarita. For the research I found, you were at one point the president of the Canyon Country Chamber of Commerce. You were a board member.
You found that, huh?
The internet's a wonderful thing. Board member on the SCV Cancer Society, the Henry Mayo Newell Hospital Foundation. This is all, correct me if I'm wrong, this is all before running for city council, correct?
That's correct. Actually, I tell the story because it really is the truth. My phone rang around 1986, and a guy that I knew from the LAPD was involved with the Canyon Country Chamber of Commerce. And he says, "Hey, Bob," he said, "don't you have horses?" And I said, "Well, I might have one or two standing around the place." And by the way, in those days, I had around 6 horses at any given time. And he said, "Well, I need a guy to help with the rodeo for Frontier Days that was held. It was an annual event that normally it was held in October." And that one, I didn't even hesitate. I said, "You got your man. I'll do it." And it was more fun. But I use that, and the reason I mentioned that one is that was my introduction to the Canyon Country Chamber of Commerce. And it was my first stepping point into becoming involved with the community. And as a result of doing that, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you one who was directly involved, and that was Carl Goldman. Carl Goldman reached out to me very soon after I became a board member for the Canyon Country Chamber, and he says, "Hey, Bob, would you consider coming on to the Red Cross board with me?" And I said, "Carl, that's a great idea. I would be honored." And I was on the board for the Red Cross, and Carl is the one that brought me over for that. And the reason I did it, I enjoyed it. I am meeting all of these incredible people here in Santa Clarita, and we all have a thing, I guess, in common, probably, helping our community and so forth. But they were just incredible people to work with and know, and that's never changed, by the way. It still exists today, and I have enjoyed it immensely.
So then we roll around over to 1999, and the story, at least that I've heard, is that you were initially asked to run for city council by people like Connie Roberts, Marley Laufer. Is that the case, or what kind of?
No, I was a victim. Oh, no, make no mistakes about it.
So,
No, I'll give you a little bit of enlightenment, but you're basically on target with that. Connie Warden Roberts was a very good friend of mine, and I just cannot speak enough good things about that beautiful lady. She called me one day and she says, "Hey, Bob, a group of us are coming together this afternoon to talk about the upcoming city council election, and we were hoping that you would maybe consider joining us." And of course, I've been involved with the community. I know the council members, and by this point in time, of course. And I said, "You bet, it is important. Thank you for the invite." So I went over to her offices, and there was about a dozen of us in the room, and we proceeded to start talking about the upcoming election. And next thing I know, the room went quiet, and Connie says, "Bob, we invited you because we want you to run."
So you were kind of ambushed.
Exactly. And I remember, and God bless them all. I'm very flattered, obviously. I said, "Guys, let me sleep on it." And I did. I thought about it for till the next day, and I picked up the phone, and I said, "If you want me to, I'll do it." And that's why I ran.
So how did that first campaign go, 99 to 2000? How did that first, because this is the first time you've ever run for public office, correct? At this point in time?
It's true.
What was that like?
Well, it was an interesting experience. I have to credit some folks. I had a lady out here that I knew, and hired her as my campaign manager, and she was pretty savvy when it came to local politics at all levels. And also, I had the benefit of having Buck McKeon's endorsement, which certainly didn't hurt. And but I obviously was successful in 2000 and was elected. So I trust me, you don't do these things by yourself. There's a lot of support and people that you can appreciate coming on board and helping you. I used to tell, over the years, I've run 5 times total. Mm-hmm. Millie Jones was the first lady that was my campaign manager, and I had other people subsequent to that. But I always had a very brief meeting with them. There's one thing we won't do. I said, overtly or covertly, we will never, ever say anything about another candidate, period. And I never let that ever, and never, and by the way, nobody ever violated that to my knowledge. But in interviews and so forth, I would never speak about another candidate. All I would do is talk about what I felt that I could do for the community.
I'm just trying to run a clean, positive campaign.
Absolutely, 100%.
So day one, or maybe day one, day two of being a city council member, you're put on the subcommittee to fight the Cemex mega mine. Tell me a little bit about, because this battle was going on for before, I believe, even you got in the city council.
This came to light about, I'm going to approximate about 94, 95.
Okay.
And, I was on the planning commission for about 2.5, 3 years prior to being on the city council.
So you already had some kind of
I had
background.
some exactly in City Hall with that. When the issue of Cemex came to light, there was a lot of eyebrows going up, I will tell you that. It was clear to me that there were people that were in some leadership capacities that did not bring that revelation to the attention of the community. And it is such a significant matter for this community. In any event, obviously when I got on the council, I was able to become part of the subcommittee. And over the years, I've approximated, I could actually go back and if I put a little effort, I could tell you exactly how many, but I would have surmised I've probably been to Washington, D.C. 30 times on the Cemex matter over the years. And as we said here today, I don't know that it's completely dead, but I know one thing: they're not mining out there, and we're 20 years later, and I look at that as a positive thing. I think it's pretty much a dead issue for Cemex to try to move forward at this point in time. But I'll tell you, we worked hard. We worked hard to win that battle.
So you said you were going to Washington, D.C. For those people who may not be overly familiar with how government, local, state, national works when it comes to battling these sort of things, what were you doing in D.C.? Were you meeting with congressmen, senators? What ultimately was the battle plan to?
And all of the above. You do. You meet with them all. See, in 2013, I was the mayor, and I had an opportunity to testify at a Senate hearing for natural resources. And on this issue, met with Secretary of the Interior. I mean, just you name it, we met with them all. We hit every button we could hit to try and win the battle. Certainly visited with Senator Feinstein, Senator Boxer at the time also to get their support, and we were able to get their support. But it's been a very difficult battle, and to my knowledge, I think we've won. I hope so.
I believe you were the mayor a total of 4 or 5 times?
4 times.
4 times. What's the difference in between being just on the city council, being a council member, and then being trusted to be the mayor of the city? What does the difference look like for you?
Well, keep in mind, the way we're structured, we're a general law city, okay? Mm-hmm. Council manager form of government. And by the way, I applaud it. I think it's a very responsible form of government, and it's the most prevalent form for your cities throughout the state of California. And that's to say that when you are the mayor, you're the front person. You chair the meetings, but you have no greater power than your fellow council members. You have 1 vote. That's it, okay? So, yeah, are you out front at the events and so forth, as we've seen here in this previous year with Cameron Smythe? He's all over the place, okay, because he's the mayor. And so that will now change. Bill Miranda will be our mayor here come December 8th, and you're going to see Bill Miranda. And Cameron's going to sit over in the corner where he belongs. That's just the way it is. But it's a good form of government. It's a very fair way of managing the city. And but like I said, you have no greater power as a mayor than you do as a city councilman.
Personally, do you feel like there's more responsibility on your shoulders?
Oh, yes.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Oh, sure. As a mayor, I'm going to look forward to sitting down in my chair there in the yard and reading a book on, I don't know, a Western book or something. because for 20 years, I read volumes of material having to do with the city. And it's not that I haven't done it with my eyes wide open, of course, but that it takes up your time. There's so many issues that and particularly a city like, we're the third largest city in LA County. This is not a Sleepy Hollow. There's things going on here. And as a result of it, I mean, I'm moving on, but at the other side of the coin is, as the mayor, you've got a lot more preparation to prepare for times when you're in front of the camera or making statements here at KHTS, whatever it may be. There's just a lot more responsibility in that regard for 1 year.
Just for the 1 year.
Just for the 1 year.
Until you come back.
Yeah, Joanne Darcy was the only one that was, and there were some extemporaneous circumstances, but she was mayor 2 years in a row back in the late 90s.
Gotcha. So you're reading these volumes of text, not even just as mayor, but as a city council member, just trying to get ready for city council meetings, trying to help residents here in the city. And that's something that I don't think a lot of residents nowadays truly understand is it's not that you're just sitting at a seat and you're a rubber stamp for whatever the city manager wants. You're doing a lot of work. You're doing a lot of reading. You're doing a lot of studying. You're trying to educate yourself on these issues. But what kind of impact did that time take up on things like family time, your own personal time? What kind of impact did that have?
Well, and it does have impact. Make no mistakes about it. I believe I give you accurate information. Certainly my intent to always be accurate. But in 20 years, I do not believe I have ever missed a city council meeting. And if the wife and I had plans to do something, if it was on top of a city council meeting, the answer was no. I'm going to that city council meeting. And I've been very fortunate, and I do believe that history would show that I've never missed a city council meeting. There was one that was a few months ago where there was some last minute putting together the council for some issue, but it wasn't one of our, twice a month council meetings, and I'd already was strung out on an issue. But anyway, having said that, so yes, does it impact your family? Absolutely, and God bless, in my case, to my wife, Kathy, that she's understood and she's always been very supportive. God bless her.
That's an always important part. So let's go into kind of more of the things you did while you were on the council. So I actually didn't know this before, doing my pre-research ahead of time for this interview. You actually proposed the creation of the Santa Clarita Arts Commission in 2009. Is that correct? Did I read that right?
You've read well. It was 2009, and I, due to a variety of circumstances, and by the way, I don't dance, I don't sing, I don't play an instrument.
So then how did you get
I
involved
don't
in
act.
something like that?
I know nothing about the arts, but I did meet with some folks, and we found ourselves talking, and ultimately I realized, this is an important area for our community, particularly we're a growing community, and as I've indicated, we're not just a Sleepy Hollow. So, and I thought it would be very positive for the community. And I had to do a little arm twisting on some folks with that one, including our city manager, God bless him. But anyway, I got it through, and we created the Arts Commission, and they've done a remarkable job. They really have. I want to jump, if you don't mind. I want to make a comment. Mm-hmm. We talk about our city and things. I mean this sincerely. Have we had a good city council? You bet we have. I would like to think that, that is an accurate statement. But I cannot overly emphasize the importance of the city manager and staff at City Hall. And I will tell you, we have been blessed with some of the most capable, and I'm going back over 25 years that I'm very familiar with, George Caravallo, Ken Polskamp, and Ken Striplin. We are so fortunate to have that kind of leadership in the key pocket, if you will, of City Hall. Because honestly, that kind of knowledge has made the job of a city council much, much easier. It really has. they have worked hard, and they're so responsive and supportive. I can't say enough about them.
Uh, yeah, I mean, Ken Striplin's front and center at a lot of those city council meetings. I see you guys are always asking him questions, and he always has an answer.
He does. He
So,
does.
along the same lines of the art commission, though, you also were involved in helping organize what's become an annual tradition for us here in Old Town Newhall, the Light Up Main Street event during Christmas time around, which we're in now. That started 2016, is that correct? Or
2013.
2013? Okay.
Same year I was mayor. And I was mayor in 16 as well, but it was 2013. And I absolutely I don't know the reason it came about is that I'm old enough to remember when I was a small youngster in North Hollywood, and I saw the Christmas lights over Lankershim downtown in North Hollywood. And they were the same as if you watch that movie, It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. There's a couple of shots in there where you see the exact same kind of lights that we had when I was a small boy in the late 40s. And I just thought, if we could replicate that here in Santa Clarita, that would just be something. And it's been replicated to a degree. Not exactly the same type of lights or decorations, but, and I will tell you, when I attend that, with this year being an exception due to the COVID issue, and all of these thousands of people come out. I'm telling you, if you don't think that doesn't make my evening to see so many people coming out and seeing, the turning on of the lights on Main Street, I thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate it, but I just makes my day, I'll tell you.
No, it's an outstanding event, and unfortunately, this year due to COVID, it had to be canceled. But hopefully next year, we can get back out in person. And if you haven't gone to this before, I highly recommend it. It's an incredible event.
Oh yeah.
Transitioning away from that, another large focus for you when you've been on the city council has had to do with our veterans, has had to do with our law enforcement, our military. In 2011, I believe it was, you were pretty essential in helping organize kind of community support for the loss of Rudy Acosta, who was a former city councilman, former state assemblyman, Dante Acosta's son. He was killed while serving in the Army, I believe in Kandahar.
That's correct.
Because in that case, it's not even just trying to help a resident of Santa Clarita who you may not know. This is somebody, Dante Acosta, who you may have been working with, who you knew closely. What was that like for you, trying to organize the support while also handling, your own personal feelings over it?
Well, having been a veteran myself, I'm pretty sensitive to our military, of course, and have always been very supportive. I did not know the parents prior to the passing of their son.
Okay.
That's how I met them. But I was also aware of a couple of other Gold Star families that had previously lost a son. And I couldn't help but think, we're not doing this right. And I will tell you, Fred Arnold and another gentleman, Bill Kennedy, I don't remember who called who, but I remember the three of us came together and had coffee one morning and said, you know what, we're not going to let the passing of this young man go and just being another casualty in war. And we put our heads together and started forming a plan to give this young man the proper send-off that he deserved. And I was very proud of that. And I will tell you, ultimately, thousands of people lined the streets for that young man. And for that young man to have lost his life, terrible. We gave him a good send-off.
And that's important.
You bet.
In line with that, in 2014, you proposed, I believe, 2014 at least was the proposal for the banner program that we have now, where we can see throughout the city banners of Santa Clarita residents who are currently serving active duty or may have at this point retired or gotten out of the military. Talk to me about why you thought something like that would be important and how you got that through.
I was down in Huntington Beach. Drove down there one day, and unfortunately, a lady I knew on the LAPD had passed away, and I went to her funeral. And I'm driving down a main street in Huntington Beach, and I see these acknowledgments for military members that are serving. And I thought, this is what it should be all about. And I sat there and as I drove my car, I'm going to work on this. And I did. And honestly, it was a fairly easy. I mean, nobody was opposed to that. Nobody. And I credit staff, and they really rolled up their sleeves and got busy on it and made the proposal at a council meeting, and I know it passed on a 5-0 vote, and so we've had the banner program since then, and I think it's a wonderful program, and I've had so many parents call me and say thank you, and it's really been rewarding, and it makes you feel good to do something like that.
And so another big kind of prominent part of our community that has to do with military and veterans is the Veterans Plaza just a few blocks down here in Old Town Newhall. How did you help along with that? Because that also seems to me like something that should be a no-brainer. We should have something that is, that honors our veterans within our community. But to my knowledge or to my understanding, it wasn't as simple as just a 5-0 vote and getting it through. And correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Kind of talk to me from your perspective how that kind of formed and how that ultimately came to be.
I could actually take it back a number of years, back into the 80s when we had Frontier Days with the Canyon Country Chamber. I remember there was a guy named Warren Johnson that was pushing to have some kind of a Veterans Park, Veterans Plaza, a Veterans Acknowledgement in our community. And he was trying to raise some money at the Frontier Days events with the Canyon Country Chamber in that interest. Years go on, and Warren Johnson, I know he passed away a number of years ago, but he never saw this culmination. But at a point in time, a number of us came together and put together a committee, if you will, a meeting at City Hall, and we had our sites on that ground that we have over there where the Veterans Plaza is. And we formulated a plan and how we could move forward and so on and so forth. Well, there's some people that they had some thoughts as to how they wanted it to look, and maybe it wasn't the same as what staff came up with and yada, yada. But ultimately, obviously, I think we came up with a beautiful, beautiful plaza to acknowledge our veterans. And it's been a winner for the community, and we have very strong support here in acknowledgement and appreciation for our veterans, and God bless. That's the way it should be.
Was there any particular stance you took or action that you took that really stands out to you as something that you could kind of put your hat on and say, this, I'm so proud of this. This is the moment that I point to when I think back on my career?
Well, we've already talked about some things that I'm pretty proud of. I will tell you, back in 2002, I'd been on the council for a little over a year, and I can remember talking to the city manager and saying, I'm looking at the Whitaker-Burmite issue. As you know, that contaminated land in the heart of our community. And I said, I see all these reports coming from this entity, this entity, this entity, but these entities never sat down at the same table. They're all operating independent of one another. And when you have ground that is contaminated, as it was Whitaker-Burmite, the Department of Toxic Substance Control, a state entity, has oversight as to how it's going to be managed and cleaned up. Anyway, in talking with our city manager at the time, and it was George Caravallo, I said, we need to put everybody at the table. And I will tell you, it was approved, and we put together all of the participants, and it's been going on for years. Now, the reason I make comment about this is that here we are, 20 years later, and my last meeting was in November, where I've chaired that committee, that coming together, and over the years. And I said, you know the irony of it, folks? I said, this is my last meeting. But I said, Department of Toxic Substance Control has just signed off that it is cleaned up to the best standard it can be cleaned up to. And I said, what a remarkable ending. I said, I'm just thrilled about this. And it took all of these years, but everybody working together. You know, you always want to pull these wagons in one direction and get everybody lined out and pulling in the same direction, and you're going to get results, and they're going to be good ones.
Now, looking ahead, this coming Tuesday is kind of going to be your farewell. You're going to get a chance to say goodbye to your fellow city council members. And Jason Gibbs, who you endorsed, has won, and he's going to be taking your seat. How do you think Jason's going to do? And do you have any advice that you would, if Jason was sitting right here, and I'm sure you've talked to him before this, but if I was Jason Gibbs, what kind of advice would you be giving him going forward?
Well, the truth of the matter is we come together on a regular basis, and he's become a very good friend of mine. And I'm just absolutely thrilled that Jason is going to be going into my office there at City Hall. I've left a couple things on the walls there for him that I thought maybe he would appreciate. And one of them is George Washington on his knee praying. He's going to do a great job for this city. There's no question in my mind about it. And have I kind of wanted to give him some insight and so forth? Of course I have. As a matter of fact, I set out a bunch of reading material for him. And I said, Jason, I think it would benefit you if you can kind of squeeze in and peruse this stuff a little bit, and it could give you some background on some of the issues that are still on the table today. And but he's a fine family man. He's a very bright man, and I'm just thrilled that he's going to be moving into the office that I've occupied for 20 years.
What's next for you?
Well, they keep using the word retirement, and I kind of retirement, my foot. I still have my real estate business, and I showed some property earlier this morning, but I'm not. I'll just be able to kind of focus on that more than maybe what I've been able to do over the last 20 years. But I'm not retiring. I'm just shifting gears. That's all.
So LAPD, you said that you told yourself 25 years and you're out, and you get out. 20 years into the city council, what was the impetus for you to say, all right, I'm done?
I got a dance or two left. I certainly hope so. It's time. 20 years is enough.
So I actually lied. This is the last question. Is there anything you want to say to Santa Clarita residents after 20 years on the city council?
Well, that's a very appropriate question. I hope my answer will be equally appropriate. I would say thank you. Thank you for giving me the privilege, and I hope I've done a good job for you, Santa Clarita. I have wanted to.
Well, thank you, former councilman.
Name's Bob.
Thank you, Bob, for joining us today. We've been sitting here with Bob Kellar, council member on the city council for 20 years. This Tuesday marks his last city council meeting. So again, thank you very much, Bob, for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.